Welcome back to the Dark Reading News Desk here at RSA 2023. Terry Sweeney here with Dark Reading, and joining us now is Jim Dolce, CEO of Lookout. Jim, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We are talking about containing the risk from the attack surface. 3 years into this global pandemic, we've got a clearer picture than ever of the threats that are associated with both remote and hybrid work. Tell us a bit about what you and your team are seeing.
Sure. Well, first of all, COVID has changed everything. We went from a model where everyone would come to the office and work in the office. For the most part, all of your data and your workloads sat behind a firewall, and the firewall was the center of your security model. And then we sent everybody home. And frankly, 3 years later, they've not come back. And so now that has changed the entire security model altogether. Traffic is no longer going through that firewall. It's not concentrated through that firewall anymore. All of the users are remote. They're operating either from their home or from a cafe. And we've had to have an entirely different security model. And that's where cloud security has come in. Not only are the users working remotely, but the payloads and the data is now all stored in the cloud. It's no longer sitting in a data center tightly stuck behind a firewall. Data is bypassing and connections are bypassing that firewall. And so the model has to change.
Sure.
And the new model now revolves around this technology, which we call SSE, where users are accessing payloads or workloads that are in the cloud, and those workloads might be a cloud service like a Salesforce or a Workday, or they just might be an enterprise application that has now been moved up to a cloud payload. And this new technology, this cloud security technology that comes under the umbrella of SSE, is replacing the firewall in all of these cases.
Well, say more about that. The challenge before organizations, obviously, is to wrangle all these highly distributed users, not to mention the apps, the software, the devices that they're using. How does SSE begin to really get to grips with that?
Yeah, so with Security Services Edge, there's an acronym for everything now, Security Services Edge, instead of passing your flows through a firewall, you are passing these flows through a proxy that is in the cloud. And the proxy can examine all of the data flows, whether those data flows are going to a SaaS service, they're going to an enterprise application that is in the cloud, or they're just going to a website. All of the traffic from the end users, who may be working from home, passes through the proxy, it gets examined in the proxy, and then terminates on one of those three endpoints: SaaS service, enterprise application in the cloud, or a traditional website. The technologies for each: Cloud Access Service Broker, CASB, Zero Trust Network Access, ZTNA, and Secure Web Gateway, or SWG.
So this is more than a virtual firewall, to use your earlier analogy. Like the perimeter has really become virtual.
Exactly.
But by moving to the cloud, you're obviously able to add greater functionality, integrate more functions.
Yes. So the virtual firewall is a good analogy, but it doesn't stop there.
Sure.
We add on top of it, as you said, other technologies. One of them is data loss prevention, or DLP, right? DLP is encompassed inside of this new SSE technology. Remember, we've had DLP, data loss prevention, for years. It took the form of a piece of hardware or an appliance that was in your data center. But we're not on-premise anymore. And so that functionality also had to move into the cloud. And it's moved into that same proxy, call it a virtual firewall. That's a fair terminology, but it's performing more function than just a firewall.
Maybe virtual SOC is a better moniker for it.
We use the word proxy, yes.
Okay. Shifting gears, the recent activity around TickTock, including bans on the devices of employees who work for state and federal agencies. Can you imagine this beginning to apply to the private sector as well?
I think there's now a lot of visibility. The one thing that TickTock did is it created visibility that extends beyond TickTock. So sure, TickTock is taking data, and we're less comfortable with where that data is going. But there are a lot of applications that collect data from your device.
Sure.
And what TickTock has done is it's brought visibility to that problem. And we're seeing an uptick in our interest in our endpoint security products for that reason. That people are now realizing that your mobile device carries a lot of data, a lot of personally identifiable information, personal data, and it is exposed by virtually every app that is sitting on that device. Mm-hmm. And so TickTock in itself is not so much the problem. The problem is that virtually every app that you use on that device is collecting your personal data and sending it somewhere. Perhaps we are most nervous about the fact that TickTok's sending it to a sovereign state, but every app is sending data someplace.
Of course.
And the good news is now we're much more aware. TickTock has brought a lot of visibility to that, and I think this whole thing will not end with just banning TickTock. It will create a lot more understanding of what happens when we are sharing data on that device, and it'll extend far beyond TickTock. Awareness and visibility is a good thing.
So whether it's employers or regulators, suddenly we have parties with a different interest in user hygiene, it sounds like.
Exactly, it's a good word for it, hygiene. Knowing where data is going, and having the ability to decide whether or not, based on the knowledge and the visibility, I choose to use that application, right? We can choose not to use TickTock. Probably more of us will choose not to use it because now we have that visibility to what's happening. When we extend that visibility to other applications, then we can make that choice. Whereas before, without that understanding, we never even had the opportunity to make a choice.
Jim, talk to us a bit about some of the specific use cases that Lookout addresses with its endpoint to cloud security platform.
Yes, so we are looking to secure the entire connection, starting with the endpoint, all the way up through the cloud, through that proxy that I discussed, and then terminating on the application. Again, SaaS applications, enterprise applications, or just a traditional website. Mm-hmm. And the ability to see the entire connection from endpoint to cloud and to collect telemetry along that entire connection gives us a vantage point that others don't have. We can collect that data and bring it all together, and we can threat hunt in a much more effective way than others who can only see the telemetry independently and not able to correlate it into one complete end-to-end connection. So it helps us in doing threat hunting. It makes us much more effective. It increases the efficacy of our security solution because the threat hunting is more effective if we can correlate the data from endpoint to cloud.
Okay, makes sense. With this enlarged attack surface, thanks to remote and hybrid working, what do you advise customers who are looking to reduce the risk of this enlarged attack surface?
I think it starts with the understanding of the threat. And the advice is very simple, that there's new models to secure your enterprise that come from the fact that, one, payloads have moved to the cloud, and two, your users have moved remote. So two things have happened. The movement towards the cloud was already happening before COVID.
Sure.
And we had to deal with payloads and data coming out from a private data center, tucked nicely behind a firewall, moving up to the cloud. That was a trend that had already started before COVID. I would say COVID accelerated that trend. There are some that say that perhaps what may have taken 5 years was compressed into a year or 2 years. That is on the transformation to the cloud. At the same time, employees went from the office to working from home and frankly aren't going back. And those two things together collided to make a massive shift in how we secure these networks. And I think the advice here very simply is you have to put the right technologies in place, technologies that perhaps 5 years ago, 3 years ago, you wouldn't even have considered. Now today, because of this transformation and massive shift, you have to be looking at a different set of technologies, cloud security technologies, as opposed to traditional firewall technologies.
Well, great perspective on how to reduce the risk and dangers associated with an enlarged attack surface. Jim, thanks for doing the Dark Reading News Desk today.
Thanks for having me.
We've been talking with Jim Dolce of Lookout. This has been Terry Sweeney for the Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for joining us for this segment. We'll see you next time.